I'm Andy, the real estate detective. As a realtor who used to be a home inspector, I'm going to show you how to buy smarter and with less frustrations along the way. Are you thinking about buying a 20-year-old home? Here are the top 5 things that you need to find out about that house before you make an offer. The first thing you need to find out about the home is how old is the furnace? Furnaces have an average lifespan of 20 years. So if it's original, what that means is the furnace is right at the end of its expected lifespan and you're going to have to budget for replacement in the near future. Now, a furnace will hardly ever last 30 years. That's almost unheard of. So really the survivors are going to last somewhere between 20 and 25 years. So just know if the furnace is original, you're going to have a big upcoming expense in the near future. The second question, and it actually piggybacks on the furnace question, is how old is the AC? An AC has an average lifespan of 12 to 15 years. So if the AC is original, it's actually exceeded its expected lifespan and you're going to have to budget for replacement in the near to immediate future. So another big upcoming expense. Water heaters the same way. They're not quite as expensive, but the average lifespan of a water heater is 10 to 12 years. So if it's original, you've really exceeded the lifespan by potentially doubling how long it's supposed to be functional. The next question you need to ask is how old is the roof? Now, if the roof's original, what that means is the average roof has a lifespan of 20 years. So there are shingles that are 25, 30, 35, 40, 50 years is what their lifespan is, but the average is 20 years. So what you're going to need to do is either get an advanced roof inspection or hunt down the builder and find out what grade of shingle that they use. A home inspector is really not going to be able to tell you, is this a 50-year roof or a 40-year roof? Most new construction houses are not using that high of a grade of shingle, so you really need to assume that it's about a 20-year lifespan on that roof. Another significant expense that you're going to have to budget for in the near future. And then the last thing I would find out is, are the windows original? Windows actually have a lifespan of about 20 years too, so another expense that's coming up in the near future. And with windows, what I mean by a lifespan isn't so much are they going to open or close, but are they going to maintain their insulating properties? Because in modern windows, there are 2 panes of glass. And in between, there's an invisible argon gas that acts as an insulator. And what happens is, over time, that argon gas starts to deplete and kind of seep out. So the windows will no longer be energy efficient, and you're going to have a lot of cloudy mistiness in the inside. So if you're buying a house or thinking about buying a house that's 20 years old, these are the key pieces of information you need to know going into it to make sure that this house is not only a house that you can afford now, but a house you're going to want to afford in the next 5 years. Because if you take all of those together, it's going to be a significant expense. So how would I go about trying to figure out if what's been replaced and what's not? First of all, you're going to need to look at the sales disclosure. And if the house is sold a couple times since it was built, I would ask your real estate agent to look and give you all of the past sales disclosures where the previous sellers were disclosing things such as the age of the roof and any other defects. Sometimes you'll even see them put in there the age of the furnace. It's not a required field, but sometimes they do. So that's one method I would do. And also, if you can't find that out, you can call your city building department or your county building department. A lot of counties require permits for the big components like roof, AC, furnace, water heater, and windows. So they're going to have a record of that if it was done and if it was permitted work. The other thing you could do is you could talk to some neighbors, but ultimately at the end of the day, if you can't find this information out, you're probably safe to assume that you're dealing with original equipment. One last thing you could do, and this is a little bit more risky if you don't know what you're doing, is you can look up serial numbers on the AC, and sometimes they're accessible on the furnace without opening a panel up. And the serial numbers are going to give you a manufacturing date. So that's going to be able to help guide you. Some of them are difficult to read, but just another avenue that you can do some research before you put an offer in. Because the last thing I would want you to do is put an offer in on a house, pay for the inspection, pay for the appraisal, and then at the end of the inspection, you find out, oh no, there's nothing wrong with this house, so to speak, but I've got a fortune in upcoming expenses that I'm going to have to deal with in the near future. And at that point, you may not want the house and you may regret putting an offer in on the house, but it becomes tricky at that point because unless there's an actual defect with the house in terms of safety or function, it can be difficult to get out of a purchase agreement without losing your earnest money. Age is not a defect, so just because a furnace is 20 years old doesn't mean that it's a defect, in that with most contracts that you can get out of that just because of the age. If it's old and not working, you got something. If it's new and not working, you have something too. You have some negotiating power, something you can bring to the table. Another thing that buyers want to do too when they find out that they're in this situation is, well, I've got all these upcoming expenses. Can I just negotiate the price down? It's a little dicey. Sometimes you can, but once again, age is not a defect. So a common thing is if you say, hey, the roof's old, it's going to need replaced in the near future. I didn't know about that expense. A lot of times the sellers are going to say, well, is it leaking? And if not, it is what it is. So really the best thing you're going to need to do before you put an offer in on a house that's 20 years old is find out those 5 key pieces of information and then do some math and determine, is this house the right house for me at the price I want to offer, plus the extra money I'm going to have to put into it in the very near future. So I hope this is helpful for you. And if you'd like to hear more information about houses and how to buy smarter, please hit that like and share button so I can keep producing more content like this that you'd find valuable.